My friends, I'm speaking to you from the city of Tel Aviv, where my family and I traditionally celebrate the Pesach, the Passover festival. Israel is my happy place over Passover. Men, women, families from all walks of life celebrating this holiday of freedom as our national holiday and celebration in Israel. But Tel Aviv this year is not so happy. I'm standing in front of the Ilka bar where just last week 3 young Jewish men in their prime were gunned down by a Palestinian terrorist. In fact, one of the 3, Eitan Megiddi, had just gotten engaged the month before, was having a drink with a childhood friend to discuss his upcoming wedding plans. And as Eitan's fiancée remarked, instead of planning for the wedding, we had to plan for his funeral. 4 terrorist attacks in less than 4 weeks, 14 innocent civilians killed, countless wounded. Indeed, there is this sense of sadness, of hopelessness, even deja vu. Here we go again. Is this another cycle of violence that is being perpetrated by the Palestinians? In the Negev, there was a summit of 4 foreign ministers of Arab countries, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Egypt, together with the Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid and the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. And some suggest that that summit may have incited some of this recent violence. But instead of undermining the summit, of undermining the pursuit of peace, these terrorist attacks have had just the opposite effect, just the opposite impact. For the first time in the history of the state of Israel, Arab leaders have been unequivocal in condemning this latest round of violence perpetrated by the Palestinians, as the 4 foreign ministers of Arab countries said in a joint statement that we will not allow this kind of terror to stop us, to prevent us from the pursuit of peace, making agreements, further agreements, with the state of Israel. And then the president of Turkey, President Erdogan, was unequivocal in his condemnation of these terrorist attacks, calling on the Palestinian people, particularly during this Ramadan Passover season, to celebrate our common faith, our common fate, to embrace that spirit of mutual respect and mutual understanding. Indeed, this time is different from the other cycles of violence. We are witnessing Arab and Muslim leaders across the world standing in solidarity with the state of Israel in its combating these terrorist attacks. At the Passover Seder, we declare B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirod et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. That in every generation we are obligated to see ourselves as though we personally went out of Egypt. We must think ourselves as the Hebrew slaves. It is our tears that were mixed with the mortar. It was our cries that God heard. And this declaration is calling on us to develop what is called empathy, putting yourself in the place of another human being. And when it comes to the state of Israel, the Jewish people worldwide, we empathize with Israel, with its people. We can feel the pain, the suffering, the anguish, the challenges, the trials, the tribulations, the triumphs. We are empathetic when it comes to the state of Israel. And in the midst of any cycle of violence, particularly terrorist attacks perpetrated by Palestinians, we are even more intense in our empathy, in our connectivity with the Jewish state. What is so remarkable, to ask the perennial question on Passover, Ma nishtana, why is this cycle of violence different than all the other cycles of violence, all the other acts of terror? That we're now seeing this sense of empathy beginning to expand, to grow within the Arab and the Muslim world. We are now witnessing me'avdut l'cherut, Arab Muslim leaders who are breaking the shackles of their deafening silence, of their moral laryngitis. They are raising their voices in solidarity with the state of Israel as Israel continues to fight these acts of terrors being perpetrated by Palestinian terrorists. So my friends, there is a glimmer of hope. There is a ray of light. Me'afela le'ora, a transition from hopelessness to hopefulness. Chag Pesach Sameach, a joyous, a happy, and a meaningful Passover to you and to your loved ones.